What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Debbie Royale. We're back with another This or That. Today, we're talking rookie drafts. Who are you drafting based on their ADP and just based on their position? And today, we are talking Adonai Mitchell and Keon Coleman, two guys that have been hotly debated pretty much all offseason. You talk about pre-draft, you talk about during the draft, post-draft. These guys have been all across the board, and especially with their landing spots now, with the Colts going with Adonai Mitchell, Keon Coleman going to the Bills, and everybody loves that pick with the 33rd pick in the second round. So where are these guys going? Now, when we're looking at ADP, I think it's important to note that this is ADP, that consensus out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean where they're getting drafted. So Keon Coleman right now, 111 wide receiver 7. I have not seen Keon Coleman go 111 in any drafts that I've been in. He's always been in the second round to me. So that's just something to note as well. Adonai Mitchell at 205, wide receiver 10. Again, when you're looking at rookie drafts, these guys have gone back to back in multiple drafts that I've been in that kind of mid-second. It really depends on kind of team needs, the running backs, like we mentioned with Trey Benson and Jonathan Brooks in our last video. It really just depends on how that value got pushed up and where the quarterbacks are going. Is that similar to what you're seeing in your drafts, Christian?
Yeah, and that was, when we were talking about this before, I was a little shocked when I looked up their ADP and realized that, like, consensus-wise, it's maybe not as close. I've seen some things like Ricky Pearsall's working in between them. I think Xavier Legette gets in that conversation, but I think he's more in that conversation with these two. And in my drafts, it's been these two players going pretty much back to back. So to me, this is it's a difficult choice. We'll talk through it today.
All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about Keon Coleman. Why don't you give us a rundown of him, what we saw from him in college, and what he kind of put up, and what his draft profile looks like?
Yeah, so kind of an okay season as a receiver this last year. 87 targets, 50 receptions, nearly 700 yards, 11 touchdowns. But a lot of that work came early in the season. A lot of the bad film was over the back half. And so early on last season, we saw a lot of Keon Coleman hype. Like, this kid is crazy athletic. He's going to go in the first round. He was close, but the back half of the season really impacted his draft stock, I think, impacted the way a lot of analysts talked about him as well. From a film perspective, there's a lot to like about Keon Coleman. I think you look at what he's got. He's got aggressive hands. He can win at the catch point. He is a basketball athlete, so you're going to hear that a lot on broadcasts when he gets on the field. He was a two-sport athlete at Michigan State before transferring over to Florida State. So you see all of that. You see him go up and get it, 3 feet off the ground. He has insane ability to make contested catches and difficult catches. Where people struggle with him is the ability to separate, or I would say the ability to get college separation. A lot of what he did at Florida State was NFL open, but it takes a really special quarterback to throw to a guy that's just getting a little bit of space. With his strong hands, you feel pretty comfortable that if he doesn't work on that separating ability, he could overcome that. With a quarterback like Josh Allen throwing to him, I think you're feeling pretty good about that, right? Like, you're looking at this Buffalo Bills offense. There's a ton of opportunity. They didn't really add much outside of him. They have Khalil Shakir there. They did add Curtis Samuel, but they lost Stephon Diggs. This offense is going to look a lot different this year for what it's worth. A lot of people are talking about how Keon Coleman's taking the Stephon Diggs role. That's not necessarily the case. This is going to be a completely different offense that does do creative things to get Keon the ball. And to me, I think they've got enough creativity to make him a viable fantasy option maybe in his rookie year. You do hope that separating ability kind of comes to fruition. I think there are signs on his film that suggest he might have it. There are times where he could, win an in-breaking route or win a comeback route with good stop-start ability and things like that, good deceleration. It wasn't always there, and the quarterback play at Florida State just was so bad that it made it really difficult to evaluate Keon Coleman. So to me, going to Buffalo, you're feeling pretty good about his outlook. I think there's a chance that he's that leading receiver behind probably Dalton Kincaid. But in the wide receiver room, I think you can make an argument that Keon Coleman could be the number one target getter for this team.
Yeah, before we get to Jordan Travis, Truthers mad at us. That's after the injury, but also even when he was out there, I do think that this offense struggled a bit to highlight what Keon Coleman did, because what you pointed out was important. He may struggle with separation, but a great quarterback can get him the football in spots. Travis was never that guy. They didn't really scheme him open either in that scheme there. I tell you who can get him the spots. Josh Allen. Josh Allen can get him in the spots and make sure that he gets it there. And I think the thing with Keon that not a lot of people have touched on, which I think is weird, because they love doing it with Xavier Worthy. Keon Coleman has 2 drops last year. That was it at 87 targets. He got targeted 87 times, and he did pretty well. He's pretty sure-handed when you talk about kind of his profile. I don't think that gets toughed on enough in terms of what he can do. And I understand that the separation is the key. I think that's really like they get the Quentin Johnson vibes. They get these things that have happened in the past. But I think Keon's a little bit better athlete. You saw the 8.18 RAS score there. And again, opportunities there, right? And like I don't think he's Diggs, but I think he's better Gabe Davis in terms of like can actually play that role the right way, the way it's supposed to be, and more consistent. And I think that's really the big one. And I think that his ability to kind of be in that contested situations, go up there and win it, that matters for them. And yeah, he comes into a place where Dalton Kincaid, and I like Dalton Kincaid. We like Dalton Kincaid on the channel, and we've talked about Dalton Kincaid plenty of times. But I think, Keon Coleman could assume that one role. Like he can come in and kind of be that guy if he gets their opportunity. So you have to like that. And he's paired with Josh Allen. What's there not to like, right? When we talk about that. Now, moving over to Adonai Mitchell. So, he's an enigma. So he's got all kinds of stuff going on with him. Last year at Texas, when he transferred over, from Georgia, you saw kind of that better, when he's thinking of like his production, 86 targets, 55 catches, 845 yards. And he always seems to find the red zone. So the one thing that Mitchell's going to do, he's going to score touchdowns. He did that all the time in college. And that's one thing that people also pointed out when you talk about, hey, maybe he wasn't on the field all the time, but he's a gamer. In the big games, he found the end zone. I do think that matters to an extent. But where he really excels, so when we're talking about Mitchell and where he excels at, vertical situations, ability to go up, and has good speed, 4.34. I mean, he had a 9.9 relative athletic score. So for the testing, you have to love that. Has a knack for kind of just being that guy. And then I think he plays the ball in the air very well too, kind of similar to Keon Coleman. And if you watched Texas last year, they schemed him open a ton last year, especially against Washington in the college football playoff. They were looking to go towards Mitchell's way. Now, the positives are great. There are negatives, though, to Mitchell's game. And I don't know if it's all like skill based. I don't know how the best to say this. It's more mental. They talk about kind of just his attitude issues. They talk about kind of like, hey, where is he going to develop in that kind of consistent basis? He talked about taking plays off, doing those type of things. Those are things that probably need to get rounded out. He went to a very, very positive culture with the Colts, though. You have to like the culture that he went to. But are you concerned with that, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, there were times where Adonai Mitchell should have been the best receiver in the nation last year, for what it's worth. I think there's some really, really special film. He's a special mover for a guy his size. Like you mentioned, he's special when he's going up at the catch point. He's got some dog in him, but part of having that dog in him, I think, is he's taking plays off, and you can excuse it however you want. To me, that was a concern. I had that as a concern before the rumors that there were off-field concerns. Now, I know Chris Ballard from the Colts already dispelled that and said this kid's great. But to me, if all the 31 other teams had those concerns, then there's something there. So, and then you look at it from like an opportunity standpoint too. This seems like a kid that might get upset about target share. I'm not sure he's going to be the first or second option in this offense with a running quarterback or a quarterback that will choose to run a little bit more than some others. So it's an interesting conversation because, like I said, talent's all there for sure.
Talent's there. I think the spot for me is I keep going back and forth on like where he landed. Michael Pittman's there. We know he's kind of that. I don't know if you want to call him he's their wide receiver 1, fantasy wide receiver 2, very perennial guy. I thought Josh Downs looked pretty good last year, breaking the team rookie receiving record, 66 receptions. He looked fine out there. And then I go back to what this offense looked like when, their head coach was offensive coordinator for Philly. A lot of, quick reads, a lot of slants, a lot of kind of goes with Anthony Richardson there, who needs to take that next step as a passer as well. You can't just discount the tight end room either. Jelani Woods, Colin Granson, those guys will get involved. They're going to get involved in this passing. I don't know if the volume is going to be there, right? And I think that's really where I have that kicker with Mitchell is like, Where is that going to come from? Can he earn those targets away from Downs? I think people are discrediting Downs a little bit. They're kind of looking at him as an afterthought now, where I don't think that. I think this is a great weapons, and I think they have a great offense around these guys. Jonathan Taylor, though, is no slouch. Evan Hull is not a slouch in the passing game. People were touting him as being a PPR guy last year. Didn't see it too much, but I think it's one of those things where he's like, Mitchell's like that best ball guy, right? That George Pickens type. I think he's like a George Pickens type production with Deontay, what we've seen the last couple of years. Now, Pickens had a couple of great big games, and then he had 1 catch, 5 yards, 3 targets. So I think that's where it lies with Mitchell in terms of him as a prospect and where he landed at in his spot. So what are we doing here? If you're on the clock, Christian, where are you going?
I lean Keon Coleman. This one's really tough because I do think that there's a world in which Adonai Mitchell does come in. He does overtake Josh Downs. But like you mentioned, I love Josh Downs last year. I think that nothing that he put on his rookie film suggested that I shouldn't moving forward. And to me, when you look at this is kind of a talent versus situation because with Adonai, if I have a grading scale. In my grading scale, I did subtract because of the taking plays off and the effort questions, right? From a talent perspective, though, Adonai Mitchell is more talented than Keon Coleman, in my opinion. But situationally, I like everything that Keon Coleman is doing a lot more. He is walking into all that opportunity that we talked about, I think, being tied to Josh Allen, the proven guy with a ton of tools and the ability to lead an elite offense versus Anthony Richardson, the question mark that I feel pretty good about, to be completely honest, but we still haven't seen it. So to me, I'm going to bank on Josh Allen and this Buffalo offense over betting on the question mark in Indianapolis.
This is a Josh Allen question. Like, this is really where it comes down to. And I hate doing that because you know what? We might look back at it. Like, it would not shock me in 2 years if Mitchell's like wide receiver 1 for the Colts. But then it wouldn't also shock me in 2 years if Mitchell's like on his second team. That's really where I'm at with both of these guys. Like, even in 2 years, like maybe they just look at it like, oh, we're going to pivot off of him because he's such a boom prospect, right? And he can be also a miss prospect. Keon feels like the safer play, but I love that he's tied with Josh Allen. And I also love that they are in salary cap hell. So I don't know how much they're going to be able to add in that range without, kind of being over the salary cap. So they are leaning on Keon early, right? And he's going to have that opportunity early. And I think they're comfortable with Keon Galton Kincaid and James Cook and that offense and saying, okay, Josh Allen, go show us why you're QB1 in the NFL, kind of similar to what they've done with Patrick Mahomes. So I'm leaning Keon Coleman as well. And we've kind of done a 360 on Keon since the landing spot and everything. I'm pretty comfortable in that mid-second, early second if he's there, and I'm on the other outside of the wide receivers and taking him there. Adonai, to me, he's a late second guy. Like, if you have him in the late second, you're going to bet on talent. That's okay there. But I do think Keon Coleman, if you're between these two wide receivers or where they're going, I'm going to lean Keon Coleman just based on landing spot. That's never killed us before. That's that strategy's never hurt us in this silly game that we play. But I'm going to lean Keon Coleman.
Good stuff.
All right. Appreciate you guys. As always, check out the Patreon. Hop in there. We got the Devy Draft Guide. Make sure you leave a comment. Where are you leaving? Keon Coleman, or are you going to go the other route with Adonai Mitchell? We appreciate you guys always tuning in. Check out our next videos. Make sure you subscribe. Check you guys later.